Really, really appreciate it. We had some technical difficulties. But anyway, super excited to have John Tarnoff here. He is amazing. I've read his book. It's called Boomer Reinvention: How to Create Your Dream Career Over Age 50. And I wanted to let everybody know that I'm Emily Clay. I'm the co-founder of Illume. We're building out a career empowerment platform for people who are in their late career, right? And people really age 50 plus. So we are going to be launching a private community in Q1 where there will be mentorship, advice, and an opportunity to expand your existing network. And would love to get feedback about what you guys want to see in this community, okay? About John, he has an amazing background. As I mentioned, he's an author. He's also a public speaker, and he is a coach. And today we're going to be going over tools to get unstuck, as well as 3 keys to reinvent your career in your 50s and beyond. So a little bit about John's background. So I met John through LinkedIn, and I had actually made a grammar correction on one of his blog posts, and I did. I don't remember. But anyways, it was all just a ruse just so that I could connect with you. So John is a career transition coach, speaker, author, and he specializes in working with senior level transitions into second act careers beyond traditional retirement, because we all know we need to work. So he's been fired 39% of the time in his last 35 years. So fun fact, he's also worked for DreamWorks. He worked for DreamWorks for 6 years. He was a film producer, studio executive, and a tech entrepreneur. And because of this, he has learned the keys to turning setbacks into successes. He reinvented his own career at age 50, earning a master's degree in spiritual psychology to focus on education as well as training. So since leaving the entertainment business in 2010, he's coached individuals and groups and led university workshops at UCLA's Anderson School of Business. He's also had corporate clients, including Bank of America, Bridgewater Associates, Carnegie Mellon University, Levi Strauss, SoftBank, TD Ameritrade, and Thrive Global. He's also, this is kind of a big deal too, he's been named a top influencer in aging by PBS and Next Avenue. And so I also wanted to let everybody know that, first of all, thanks for your patience on the whole Zoom versus Crowdcast thing. But there is a, we're not, in the chat, if you guys have a question, just, put it in the chat. Yeah, okay, perfect.
And I've got the chat open, so I'm watching the chat too.
Okay, excellent. And Nick has all the URLs and everything in the ebook, so he can put those in the chat as well. So with that introduction, and we were saving the last about 10 minutes for the Q&A, but please don't be shy, ask any questions. We have the expert in the room now, so don't be shy, everybody. So please, please, please raise your hand. And then, as I mentioned, we'll be posting about 3 URLs in the chat, especially for the free ebook. So to get started, my first question is, can you please talk about 2 or 3 keys for successful reinvention, especially later in your career? Several are outlined in your book, but I wanted you to just be able to elaborate on a few of them.
Sure. Well, first of all, hi, everybody, and thanks for your patience in getting this thing set up. Technology is what it is. So we just have to kind of make the best of it. And here we are with all these backup plans. So good. I'm glad it worked out. I'm glad you could make it today. And thanks, Emily, for inviting me on. The 2 things that I think are really important for us all to remember, and it's kind of like the philosophical underpinning of my methodology and of the book, and particularly if you've been around for a while and you're trying to kind of figure out what your next move is. And this can be a very discouraging phenomenon for those of us who have been nose to the grindstone for so many years, and we find ourselves either tossed out, and this is a bad year for everyone. It's a bad year statistically, particularly for people over 50. Or you are kind of wondering what the hell you're still doing at this company or in this job or in this role. And you're trying to figure out what the next phase is, and you're coming up blank. And I believe really, really wholeheartedly that the next phase of your career is already inside you. That you're not going to find it out there. You're not going to find it in some Myers-Briggs test. You're not going to find it in some, I'm a career coach, but you're not going to necessarily have a career coach tell you what it is and kind of dictate to you what you should be doing. And you're not going to find it in an open job position somewhere at a company that sounds better than the one you're at. And Emily, you're going to have to pull me back because I get these threads.
No. I know. I had all these different questions, and I put them in different orders.
But
it's really the 3 keys for successful reinvention.
All right. So I'll get back to number 2. Number 2 is that to create the future, you have to reconcile the past. And part of the issue for those of us who've been around for a while is that we've got baggage. And there are
Me? Yeah.
There are issues, right? We got issues, as Lily Tomlin used to say. And whether it is a job you got fired from, a bridge you burned, a relationship that went sour, a bad boss that you have nightmares about still after 10 years, whatever that might be, if you haven't come to terms with it, if you haven't figured out how to accept it, you're going to be bringing this with you to every meeting that you go on. There's going to be.
So then if you you said I could interrupt earlier.
Yeah, sure.
If you have, say, maybe somebody in your past who didn't like you very much or whatever, then what do? Do you delete them from LinkedIn, or do you confront them and go, hey, I know you didn't like me, but can we talk?
It's not about them.
Okay.
It's about you. It's about me. It's about, am I willing to accept the fact that, and this has happened to me, that this person called me into their office at 9:01 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. And before I had a chance to even sit down, said, this is your last day. Go back to your desk, pack up. You're going to get escorted out of the building.
Oh my God.
And it's not like they were firing me for cause, right? I hadn't done anything wrong. They just wanted me out. It was the wrong place for me to be.
Yeah.
So I didn't put that job on my resume for years.
Yeah.
I was there 6 months. It was a stupid decision. The CEO wanted me. He was in New York. The guy who ran LA had no interest in having me in the company. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to forget that ever happened. But that turned out to be a wrong decision because that kept festering inside. And ultimately, and actually when I was writing the book, I used this as a opportunity to come to terms with that particular incident, job, bad episode. And in the book, I talk about a methodology, a visioning methodology to reconcile these kinds of past experiences.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Where you can kind of figure out this acceptance process of accepting what happened for you, the experience that you had, imagining what was going on in the mind of this other person, trying to figure out what was going through their head that they did what they did. And through this process to come to, not necessarily, you're not going to kind of resolve everything and make yourself feel great, but at least you can come to some sense of acceptance around it.
Right.
And the point is that unless you do that, and I see your question, Kelly, so maybe you want to add it into the chat. The point is that if you go on an interview, and in my situation where I didn't have that job, if they want to look through the resume or they want to pick you up on LinkedIn and say, hey, what happened back in November to December or January? Or, is that a gap?
Yeah. Well, and they can find it eventually anyway, because they have your government records, right? I mean, they can get your.
I guess no, I don't think they can. I don't think they can look that much in detail. But if it's a recent situation and then they say, tell us about what happened in leaving this job. Why did you leave XYZ Corp?
Yeah.
You need to be prepared to talk about that. And especially as an older worker, you're vulnerable enough walking in there for a job. It's a whole other question about should you be going out on jobs versus trying to figure out something more entrepreneurial. But yeah, most of us want to work in jobs. Most of us do work in jobs. And you need to be able to say, hey, let me tell you about that situation. Let me tell you why it was not a good fit.
Yeah, yeah.
And let me tell you about what I did. Let me tell you about my sense of what they did, how it could have worked out better, why it didn't work out the way it did, what I've learned from that. And let me tell you how it applies to my coming in here today to talk about this job. You've got to be really completely prepared. You've got to be completely neutral about it. You've got to be positive about it. And you've got to put yourself in the chair of the interviewer, the recruiter, the hiring manager, and think, okay, what are they expecting? What do they really need? What do they need from me? How does this relate to the role? Can I roll through this by being positive about it? And let's get back to the subject of the meeting, which is, why am I the excellent fit for this new job?
Yeah, yeah.
But you got to have it clear inside yourself, or it's going to go south.
Right.
Even if it never comes up in the meeting, they may well say, you know, I love this person. They were great, but there's something about them. I don't think they were hiding anything, but they didn't seem 100% forthcoming. There was something.
Huh.
Let's go with the other person.
Wow. Okay.
Because this is such an intuitive process, right?
Yeah, yeah. So is it best to not wait to be asked? To just say, hey, you might be wondering about.
You
or,
might,
mm-hmm,
you might,
mm-hmm,
you might, they may be dancing around it.
mm-hmm.
They may be asking you about every job around that one job. And you will get points for saying, hey, you haven't asked me about XYZ Corp.
Mm,
And let me talk to you about that, because
mm-hmm.
that might have looked like a sensitive topic.
Okay.
And I just want to reassure you about it. You get great points for being that transparent, that forthcoming. It shows that you are reconciled, that you've accepted it, that you're strong, that you don't mind talking about difficult situations, because guess what? In your new job, you are going to be expected to communicate forthrightly and honestly and take responsibility and be transactional.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
So you may as well demonstrate that right off the bat.
Yeah. Okay. And what's your third key for successful reinvention?
So the third key is basically beginner's mind, right? It's so important to come to the table with a beginner's mind. And that's why the idea that your career is already inside you, this next phase is inside you, you have to reconcile the past in order to move forward. And then once you've reconciled the past and you're back at square one, and you have all of this clarity in front of you, this opportunity in front of you, then you have to take on the beginner's mind, become a student, become curious, not think that just because you have 20, 30, 40 years experience, you know what's what, because tomorrow's a new day. And we see today in this economy that everything is turning upside down.
Right.
Businesses that have been established, and this has been going on in the technology disruption for the last 30 years, but it has accelerated exponentially this year. And I don't think it's going to slow down particularly. I think we're in this continued phase of disruption. And what I think the pandemic has done for a lot of businesses, it's kind of ripped the Band-Aid off. And now we're having to confront all of these situations. So your willingness to be transparent, learn new stuff, pivot, reframe a lot of who you think you are, what you think you can do, really important.
Yeah, I love that. The next question is about, in your book, you talk about information is power during reinvention. Can you kind of go into that a little bit?
Sure. I think you're you're alluding to this idea of getting feedback, getting third-party input, and I talk about this in the TED Talk. This idea that you've got to, if you've got an idea for your next great thing, you need to do the research. You need to specifically go out and connect with people that you have known for some time in the past, whether it's family, close friends, college roommates. And I always recommend a former boss as one of the people that you talk to. And even if it's someone that you did not have a particularly great parting of the ways with, if you can connect with them, there's been sufficient, hopefully, water under the bridge. In the people that I work with, so often, if they take the chance to reach out to the former boss, and the former boss agrees to talk to them, the conversations are amazing. Because
really?
there's this sense of perspective that comes from having had some time since the job. They've learned a lot, they've changed, they're in new positions, maybe they've been tossed out on their ass. So you find that you're kind of, it's like college reunion time in an unexpected way. And particularly if it's someone who hired you, but then fired you, what was that about, right? What did they see in you? Did something change?
Yeah.
Where's the feedback? Where's the constructive information that you can use to become more powerful? And that's the idea of information is power. The feedback is just information. You can take it or leave it. You can say, I agree with what they have to say. Their perception is accurate. You can check it out with someone else after the meeting. You can go to someone else who is contemporary of yours at the company at the time and say, hey, here's what someone told me about what I did back then. Do you agree? And maybe they'll say, well, now that you're asking, yeah, as a matter of fact, I do agree. That becomes important information because you have the opportunity, instead of kind of going, I don't want to hear about this stuff, I just want to kind of stay in my bubble and whatever will be, will be. It's like, no, you have an opportunity to say, okay, if that's true, and that was maybe 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago, have I changed since then? Have I learned that lesson? What could I do differently?
Yeah, right.
Because we can reframe, we can change on a dime. It's back to the beginner's mind. If I have the ability to do something differently, why would I not take advantage of that? Take advantage of that information.
Yeah, and getting the real perspective of people who have worked with you or people who are really close to you and go, yeah, here are some areas that I think could be, where you're strong and where maybe need some work.
And I will say, this is not a casual kind of a conversation. And I don't, for a minute, suggest that anyone just kind of go out and do this. And I've got, it's a pretty involved section of the book, because I want to make sure that people understand that there's a protocol around this to do this effectively. Otherwise, it can be damaging. It can be damaging to your sense of yourself. It can be damaging to the relationship you have with this other person. You have to be really careful about this and set it up correctly so that it actually becomes a valuable process.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's, I think it takes a lot of courage to do something like that.
It does. And yet I would submit that we have that courage merely because we're still standing. And, having been through all that we've been through, let's assume we've all been in close relationships, partnerships, marriages, in and out, money won, money lost, houses, kids, all of these challenges. Those are some pretty heavy duty life experiences that we've all experienced. We should be able to do this.
Yeah. No. Okay. I like that. So walk us through some of the tools that you recommend in order to help age 50 plus professionals get unstuck. And that was also part of your book. That's why I wanted to have you kind of go through it a little bit.
You were referencing a particular page, and when you
I
sent me
was.
this note, I'm going, oh my God, page 178. What is that? So I have the book here.
Oh, good, because you wrote it. Good.
And I'm going to pick a few of these to talk about. And the first one that I mentioned is this idea of stop beating yourself up. You know, we are all too flipping critical of ourselves in this culture and at this age. There is a message out there that getting old is bad. It's a disease. Age researchers are trying to cure us of dying. I mean, this is really, I'm sorry, this is really sick, right? And I think we have to, again, part of acceptance, I think we have to really embrace the fact that we are aging and that there is incredible value that is happening to us. And I will just, one little diversion, if you will allow me, that really kind of crystallized this for me. Many years ago, I was up in the middle of the night one night and flipping channels, and I came upon an Oprah rerun, and she had Maya Angelou on. And Maya Angelou, I guess, had just turned 80 or something. And Oprah says to her, "So what's it like being 80? And Maya Angelou gets this amazing expression on her face. And she looks out in the audience and she goes, "Oh, I want you all to live to be 80 or beyond." She said, "I thought my 70s were an amazing phase of my life. The 80s are unbelievably spectacular."
Yeah.
And I thought, whoa, I want that.
Yeah.
That's what I aspire to. This sense of awe and wonder at the miracle of life and the understanding and the wisdom that comes to us as we get older, if we are open to it.
So getting unstuck takes embracing it, even though, a lot of society doesn't. And we are kind of our own worst enemy in terms of that, right? And thinking, oh yeah, can be. Not Maya Angelou, but others.
Right. So lean into the aging process, and look for the uniqueness. And there's another section of the book, and I kind of pulled this back out in a blog post the other day, Emily, which I think you may have seen, which is the old Hendrix line, let your freak flag fly.
Yeah, I did I like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think, not that we have to be eccentric and wear crazy clothes and do silly things because we can, but to be authentic, to really give ourselves the opportunity at this point to flex a little bit into these areas of uniqueness, and to not feel that we necessarily have to conform quite so much, or that we can change up our routines, find different ways of doing what we need to get done without the same constraints, if we feel them to be constraints.
Yeah. Okay, I like that. Any
So,
other words on getting unstuck?
So this comes out of a lot of research that's been done on habit building, and there have been a few really great books about habit building that have come out in recent years that are based a lot on neuroscience. James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, I think is a really wonderful book that talks about this. And what the behaviorists are talking about is the idea of micro change, and the idea of building new neural pathways around, and this is what Ariana Huffington and the Thrive Global people talk about as micro steps. The idea that you come up with a very, very attainable, they call them too small to fail, habit steps that you can take on a regular basis. Maybe it's every day, maybe it's every week, to build up this sense of trust in yourself. Because you think about it, New Year's resolution, I'm going to the gym, I'm losing the weight, whatever it is that you're doing, and then you fall off the wagon, you are undermining the trust that you have in your ability to do better, take care of yourself, be accountable to yourself for the commitments that you make for yourself.
Yeah, I like that. Taking
Right?
the
In order
small
to,
steps.
yeah. So, and this is true at any age, but I think particularly if we've got a lot of well-worn rituals as older people, and we find ourselves falling into some degree of cantankerousness about, oh, well, I don't do that, or I don't do that anymore, or I'm too old too. If you hear yourself saying these things, stop a minute and think, well, is this really true? And what could I do behaviorally using a micro step to move that around?
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And
no, I like that.
So, and I just want to recommend a micro step to everyone. It's the favorite kind of foundational micro step. A glass of water every morning as you get up, because your body loses hydration overnight. So rehydrate your body first thing in the morning. Have that cup in your bathroom. Have it filled the night before, so that you get up and you walk into the bathroom. And first, it's like, okay, there's the glass of water. Something as simple as that can begin to rebuild a lost sense of confidence and a sense that you're done.
Yeah, no, I believe in that. I've started doing planks every time I brush my teeth. I mean, not at the same time, but after I brush my teeth, then I'll do like a 1 minute plank.
Interesting, like a one-arm plank, and then you switch.
No, I'm not fancy. No. So when you're working with people as a coach, what do you do to really get people out of their comfort zone? I mean, is there any one particular thing that you say, okay, you know what, I feel that there's something here, we got to move forward, or how do you go about doing that?
Sure. And we've been talking about this, this idea of micro steps of habit building, and the idea of reframing limiting beliefs. And so much of what we assume about ourselves and about life is an acquired, chosen belief. So the process really is to start delving into, and I have some exercise sheets which I include in the book about this, about your roles, the roles that you do every day, professionally, personally, in your family, and to start enumerating what those roles are, and then to think about, well, how could they be different? What would it look like if I were to do something different or differently? And when you start to do the exercise around how you would change these things up merely as a thought exercise, it begins to poke holes in the certainty that you have around the way things work.
Yes.
So it's a slow process. There's no flipping of the switch. It's about gradually building an awareness that you have a choice. And if you believe that you have one choice and you get that, then everything is possible.
Yes, I believe that. And then it's easy to get into that rut of feeling like, oh, well, this is what I've always done, so I must continue to always do this.
Right.
But now there's more opportunities than ever. I mean, there really are a ton of different opportunities because of technology.
Yeah.
So
and just one more thing, part of the thing about being in the rut is that you start to create these workarounds because you're stuck in the rut, and you feel like the rut is the reality.
Yeah.
So you have to make allowances and adjustments, and you find yourself increasingly, and I've seen this in many people, twisting themselves into knots to avoid having to confront the limiting belief.
Yeah.
And not really understanding that is a belief that can be obliterated, not just circumvented.
Yeah, I like that. I like the fact that you have a master's in psychology and spiritual psychology. So number 5. Okay, you've recommended that professionals who are 50 plus reveal their age by having graduation dates on their LinkedIn. So that flies in the face of all the recommendations out there, is shave off 10, 15 years, because then they'll call you back. But then you get the actual interview, and unless you have a bag over your head, they're going to know that you're not 25 anymore.
Well, yeah, you're answering your own question. I mean, this is staggering to me, and it's staggering to me that I am the outlier on this.
Because yeah, I mean, I guess it doesn't work, and then it's a dead giveaway also
Well,
when you don't have the dates,
so here's
right?
my question: what is the age of the person who is telling you to take your ages off your resume?
Yeah,
Right?
right.
They're not. They're younger. They're not thinking about it, and there is a fear factor going on here around this that is really toxic. And by taking your age off your resume, you're calling attention to your age,
Yeah,
and they're going to figure out that you're older. And if they are biased against you because of your age, A, they're going to find out.
yeah,
B, they're not going to hire you. And C, if you can somehow manage to trick your way into that job, what's that going to be like every day? Walking into a job where you kind of dissembled your way into landing it. And what happens when they find out? And what happens if it's a really toxic ageist culture and you're in hiding every day?
yeah,
Is that
yeah.
really how you want to be going to work?
Yeah, no, I hear you. I just I get concerns about yeah, getting a call back at all. But you're right. Do you want to work for that person anyway? Because they're going to find out sooner or later. So there was
I mean,
a woman who, oh, go ahead.
well, I was going to say, I got into a back and forth with one of my connections on LinkedIn about this. There was a woman who was basically saying to me, in no uncertain terms, don't go there. And
Wow.
as a woman, and I completely understand this, talking about how her experience of ageism, just based on the change in her look over the last 10 years, has freaked her out and infuriated her justifiably. And my pushback on this is, and I take this very seriously, is that we are living in a youth obsessed culture, have been for a long time. Our generation kind of started it, or advertisers decided that as teenagers, we were kind of the way to sell products. And so we had to kind of be young forever. But do we want to buy into it? And it is oppressive the way youth culture has pushed us and pushed women into a corner over the years. And I think we've got to say enough is enough and realize and find and stand up for the value that we bring to the table beyond our looks and beyond our smooth skin. And we just have to make this into a socio-political statement.
There was a quote that I found that I thought falls right into this topic about hiding your age on LinkedIn. And it says, the natural response to shame is hiding, and hiding breeds silence, which further deepens shame. And that was by a shame expert, Gershon Kaufman.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, I mean, there is a lot of shame, a lot to unpack there.
Absolutely.
I mean, even people who are helping us promote illume hire did not include, reinvention, late career, or age, or anything. And so it was really interesting to just see what people would post. So there's a lot of work to be done around that for sure. Yeah. So go ahead.
Emily, can we talk can we address Karen's question in the chat?
Yeah.
Which I think is a really great question, and the question is, just for those of you who aren't looking at the chat, when going through the reinvention process, would you suggest going back to childhood to look at jobs you thought you might like to do as an adult? Would there be specks of wisdom in that process? Yes and no. I think we have to be really careful about the ideas that we had then, because we are different people now. So I think you have to evaluate the idea that you had. Maybe this was a pursuit that you got scared off of, and your parents said, you got to get a real job. And now you're at a certain point, you're thinking, oh, kind of bucket list or whatever the impulse is, I should go back and I should open up the ice cream stand, be an actor, go, open a scuba resort in Aruba, whatever that is. You got to make sure that it works for you now. And there are a few stories I won't go into details on of people who got a real head of steam around finishing that degree or whatever the thing was that they had wanted to do for years and years and years, only to realize that once they accomplished it, it didn't work. It really wasn't what they wanted. So you have to make really, really sure that it's still resonant and that it is practical and is ultimately that it's useful. And I think that's something that I talk about a lot, this idea of following our bliss and the whole great Joseph Campbell idea of follow your bliss and the money will follow, which he never actually said. But we kind of have this in the back of our mind. Wouldn't it be nice if we could do that? And I think we have to replace the word bliss with usefulness.
Yeah, I think useful
right?
as well. Yeah.
And if you follow your usefulness, then the bliss will follow. Because in your usefulness, particularly now as we crave deeper relationships with people, more meaning and purpose in our own lives, to be useful and to provide real value in someone else's life or business creates this wonderful sense inside ourselves of purpose and bliss and connection, which is ultimately, I think, what we want.
Right. And I think especially for late career professionals, I mean, it can apply to all ages, but I feel like something happens when you turn 50, when you go look around and go, okay, what am I really doing? And is this more meaningful? Okay, there's another question by somebody named Tom.
Yeah.
And he said, is it crazy to go after roles that are typically held by significantly younger people? Good question.
Yeah, kind of crazy. I mean, here's the thing, which I say to people a lot. It's like, if you get tossed out of a job and your strategy is to go and try to find another position like the one that you just left, you're going to be competing with people. Let's say you've been in that job for 10 years. You're going to be competing with people who are 10 years younger and 10 years cheaper than you are.
Yeah.
And I think the truth of it is that we have to upgrade our sense of who we are and what we're capable of and bring it up to today and do that deep dive. Another thing that people talk about skills all the time and how your resume is getting scanned by these by
ATS systems,
right? By the applicant tracking systems, and they're looking for keywords, they're looking for skills, they're looking for certifications, they're looking for whatever they are for the job. And my point of view is that skills are for kids, right? If you don't have a sense of how things really work structurally, if you don't have a sense of strategy, critical thinking, experience, and gravitas, then all you've got are your skills. And your skills are your kind of factory level, repetitive productivity tools, which are great when you're young and that's all you've got. But why would you want to compete with someone who is being judged on their skill set when you offer so much more?
That's interesting. I like that because that's all I've been reading about is upping your skills, increasing your skills,
right.
Doing this and that. And that's great.
Yeah, skills
but
are great.
It's also about owning your experience.
Right. So here's I mean, this is all so nuanced at the end of the day. You can't really just take anything that I say, one thing that I say, hold on a second, I'm getting crazy color shifts here. So there's a guy who was a business owner, sold his business. It was early. It was like a direct sales, direct mail business that went onto the internet, got successful, middle level successful, and he sold the business and got recruited about, I guess, 2 years now by one of the tech giants. And he got put on a team that was doing strategic research around business development, new businesses that the company could develop or acquire. And he was not quite sure. He never felt really comfortable on that team. He was 15 years older than the oldest person on that team. Now, none of them had ever bought, sold, or built a business, so he was there for a good reason, but he never quite felt like he was part of the team. He felt kind of like a curiosity, even though his boss, who was also 15 years younger than him, kept saying, no, you're doing great, you're doing great. And he decided to go out it was last Christmas break before COVID. He went out and he decided he was going to take an advanced Excel course because he saw that there was a need for more number crunching on that team, and that a lot of the other colleagues were having trouble with their Excel. So he decided to become the Excel expert on the team, and everything changed. And all of a sudden, people are coming to him for help in running their numbers, putting them into presentations, et cetera, et cetera. And he found that in that context, that one skill was the gateway that allowed him to be strategic and to provide the wisdom that he could provide for all the reasons he was on that team, but it allowed him to integrate better. So
yeah. So
you gotta figure it out.
He looked at the gaps and went, okay, I can fill that, but it's going to take some work.
Usefulness.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Find your usefulness.
So we have another question here by Elaine, and she says, if you feel ready for something new, but don't really have any idea what that should be, how do you go about figuring what that should be, figuring that out?
Sure. I'm going to give you a really glib answer, which is that's what the book is all about. It's about this 5-step process of getting to the point where you can begin to ideate. So the first 3 of the 5 steps that I talk about in the book, reframing, listening, getting feedback, and then accepting or reconciling the past, get you to the point where you're finally able to actually consider what could be ahead for me. And then in that 4th stage, you're actually ready to start collecting ideas, entering into conversations. You've probably already by this time talked to people who have told you, hey, this might be a good idea.
Yeah.
Keep doing that research. Someone said I should be doing this. What do you think? No, they're full of crap. You should be doing that. Information is power. Collect ideas. Journal. The most amazing tool that you can do is to journal a page a day and let the thoughts flow. Make this completely stream of consciousness. If you want to go into greater depth, there's a classic book on this called The Artist's Way, which talks about this idea of morning pages. If you want to get over writer's block, I mean, it's for writers and artists, but if you want to overcome writer's block, you want to sit down and write about anything but the page that you're afraid to work on. So the idea of the morning pages, or in my distillation of it, because writing 3 full longhand pages a day for a non-writer is challenging. But take a page, take 10 to 20 minutes, do it every day, do it every morning or every night before you go to bed, and just download whatever is present. It can be about what you're going to do. It can be your frustration about the day. It can be frustration about not having the time to focus, about having a blank head, about not wanting to be writing the journal that you're writing. Over time, you're developing a dialogue with your unconscious. And if you are willing to agree with me or give me the benefit of the doubt that the career you want is already inside you, that unconscious voice will manifest through the journal. And you will find yourself over the course of the next 30 days, 60 days, if you do this regularly, you will find this dialogue, and you'll find yourself thinking about things you haven't thought about in years. And you'll start making connections between what you love and what you can do that you never thought possible. You'll start to make connections by what you see out in the world, what you hear. People will say, hey, this, so-and-so, they just started this business doing something, and you'll go, whoa, I could do something like that. And then you realize that a month ago, you never would have thought of that. You never would have made the connection. So miracles like that, little miracles like that happen. And then, of course, use visuals, use a vision board, collect pictures, and do research on the internet. Keep a folder for the websites and pages, articles that you like, that appeal to you. Use a note-taker app like Evernote or Microsoft OneNote or any of the other competitors to be able to clip stuff and collect it and categorize it so that you begin to see patterns of what it is that you're interested in, what keeps coming up for you around this stuff. Who are your favorite writers? What are your, all this kind of, I can go on forever talking about the ways that you can begin to focus in on all of this stuff.
No, I think that's great. And I do recommend your book. It's really, really good. It goes in depth. But the last question I have is, you've worked with so many different people. So what was memorable to you in terms of working with that late career professional? What was, can you give one or two examples of somebody you work with and what happened?
So you're talking about some of the profiles in the book?
Sure, you can pull from there if you want to, but a major reinvention that you helped them with that you kind of later went, wow, that was pretty big.
Right. Well, there are a few kind of, the most interesting story to me in a way is, and I think it's a problem that I see a lot, that got really clear for me in this one gentleman that I worked with. This is a guy who was a engineer and an MBA, and he was working in the automotive sector in a consultancy, and he hated his job, just hated his job. Thought the CEO was kind of flighty and kind of liked his manager okay, and was so about the projects that they were working on, but he'd been there for, I guess, 8 or 10 years and just wanted the hell out. And he was engaged in what I have since come to call job board porn, where he would go home at night and after dinner, he would fire up the computer and he would go on to Indeed or Monster or any of the job boards and fantasize about the job, the open positions that he would see. And he would apply to some and never get a call back, never get an interview. And I said to him, you've got to stop doing this, because this is preventing you from recognizing what it is that you want to do and the value that you can provide, usefulness again.
Yeah.
And this is just completely destroying your confidence, because, by the way, you're applying to jobs that are asking for 7, 8, 9 years experience. You have 25 years experience, and they don't want you. He says, but they could benefit from my 25 years. It's like, no. They don't want that 25 years experience. They want the 7, 8, 9 years experience. They don't want any more than that. And a lot of people don't understand this, that they think, oh, I can bring so much more to the position. No.
But there are companies that are intentional about hiring older people. There are companies
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Separate question. Yeah.
That's
different. And they will say, looking for, deep experience,
Sure.
20 plus years or whatever. Sure. If they ask you if it looks right, yeah, absolutely. You want to go for it. But anyway, the task with this guy was for him to kind of reinvent himself within his company. And he's in the automotive field, and he loved electric and autonomous vehicles, and he had done a lot of research on this. And he was, I said, well, what have you done about introducing these ideas to the company? He said, oh, they're not interested in this. I said, well, you don't know that. And long story short, I got him to think more about this and to start writing about it and blogging about it. I got him to set up his own website, which was called zeroemissionzealot.com. And he was calling himself the ZE Zealot, the Zero Emission Zealot. And he's walking down the hall one day in the office, and he passes the CEO, and the CEO says, hey, Mike, how's it going? What you working on lately? And he says, well, as a matter of fact, he's kind of thinking, well, screw it. He thinks, well, as a matter of fact, I've got this this initiative that I've been thinking about blah, 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 and zero emissions and this and thing. And the CEO says, oh, sounds interesting. Why don't you put a few slides together and present at the next all hands? So he did. And cool. The CEO says, this is really great. We should get on this. Mike, why don't you start this whole new thing, blah, blah, blah. And,
I love that. I love that.
And all of a sudden, over the course of, and this took a while, right? But 6 months from job board porn to, new initiative.
Right. Well, and he took the steps.
Yeah.
He wrote the articles.
Yeah.
About, his opinion about what to do. Yeah.
Well, it was all because it was what was inspiring to him that was also useful to the company.
Yeah, I think you have to know whether or not you have that psychological safety in order to go, hey, are you open to ideas? And that's a different topic too. But I have a couple more questions. So somebody said,
luck does equal opportunity and preparedness. Absolutely, Elaine.
And then somebody talked about age and diversity, as a form of diversity, which of course,
absolutely,
cognitive diversity.
Yep. So I'm trying to beat this drum, and I've got a course on LinkedIn about this called managing. What are they calling it? It's like I think it's called managing older generations, or managing across generations.
Okay.
And it talks about how companies should be using age diversity as an element of overall diversity and inclusion initiatives. But what I found out in doing the research is that only 8% of companies consider age as part of the diversity equation. So, the ageism is just rampant.
It's interesting though, because from what I've read, there will be a labor shortage in 3-4 years. Now it's been put on hold because of the pandemic, of course, but it will happen again. I mean, so the earlier companies get on board with it, the better. So it's super interesting. I don't know that did I miss any other questions? I don't think I did, but I did want to point out, so if you guys haven't seen John's TEDx talk, I highly recommend that. And then I also would recommend downloading the free ebook. Let's see. Oh, somebody wrote, take a look at the radical age movement. Oh, I haven't heard of that. I mean, that's not Ashton Applewhite, is it?
No, I mean, it's. I think it's more general than that. People have been talking to me about that.
Okay.
I don't necessarily think that the radical age movement, and I love Ashton, and I think she's been a great advocate for older generations. I'm missing the practicality. It's like you can rail all you want, and we're the only ones who are listening to ourselves. That's my big issue with a lot of the advocacy, which is that it's only going to the people who already know, what's what. It's not going to the people who are deciding that, well, we're just going to hire people under 35.
Right. No, that makes sense. Well, that wraps it up. I wanted to say thank you so much for being here and for being, open to doing the Zoom call instead. So I had fun. Thank you so much. It was great. Very informative.
I had a great time. Thank you all for attending. Thank you all for your questions.
Thanks, John. Bye. Talk to you soon.
Bye, everybody.